what am I doing to contribute to the challenge, right? Or to the success of the organizations. It's how am I contributing as a leader? Because the buck stops with the leader. My dad always used to say, leadership is not for the faint of heart, and it's not.
Welcome to Unexpected Journey, the show where each week top professionals share work wisdom and life lessons about their careers and what they have learned about human experience in the workplace. I'm your host, Ann Bibb. Today I am joined by Vicki Brackett. Vicki Brackett is a recognized subject matter expert in virtual and work-at-home contact center operations. She is currently involved in cultivating successful partner relationships in the U.S. for LivePro, a state-of-the-art CX knowledge management system. Vicki is also the author of the Leadership Toolbox, Manage Less, Achieve More, in which she shares her experience leading contact center organizations ranging from 200 to more than 2,000 people across diverse industries. Her book presents a systemic approach to leadership that empowers organizations to become top performers at an accelerated pace. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode filled with valuable insights and actionable tips for optimizing contact center operations. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments below. Now let's get started. Welcome, Vicki.
Thanks so much for having me, Ann. Appreciate it.
Tell us, writing a book, it's not an easy thing. Talk to us about your journey towards becoming a leadership expert, specifically in the virtual work at home environment.
I got into contact centers, of course, by accident, like most people, and then in work at home by accident. And I started back in work at home in 2000. And really what I've been doing for most of my career in the contact center space is doing turnarounds and rapid growth scenarios. So it's sort of like fixing a fast moving train. And I'm usually the only person from the outside that has come in to usually an organically grown organization, or relatively organically grown. And people are really struggling. They don't have the skill sets to get themselves to the next level. They might need someone to look at things a little differently. And what I found myself is like the one woman show trying to carry the entire organization forward. And I realized very quickly is that you have to get people on board fast. And if they don't have the leadership tools, you've got to teach them, but you teach them as you go. This isn't about classes or syllabus workbooks on all of that. It's specifically about teaching them as you're doing it. And so through the years, I've been doing these rapid turnarounds in contact centers. I've been in almost 170 business units. And somebody has said for probably 10 years, I've heard it a million times, is you need to write this stuff down. So I decided to write it down. I started the book in 2019 and published it and then republished it in 2020. And it's my playbook. So I have 72 leadership tools. This is the first 14. This is the foundation. They're interchangeable and they're super simple and they're built on human psychology. That's really what leadership's about. It's understanding people's behaviors.
Just almost laughed out loud, like snort laughed whenever you said that being in a contact center was like being on a fast moving train. Yeah. That is such a great analogy. For those of you who have never worked in a contact center, and I think the majority of our audience has in some way, fashion, or form, whether they've actually been in it or outsourced it or some way they have. And it really is this wild roller coaster like train. And the speeds of up and down, and then all of a sudden you're going off the ledge and you're like, okay, am I going to be that person that holds on tight or the person that puts their hands up and goes, I'm just going for the ride? Because that's what it is like being in a contact center.
It changes every day. It's constantly changing. It's not like you set strategic plans and then sit back and they magically appear. There's constant challenges every single day that you have to improvise. And when you're dealing in a virtual world, you just don't walk across the room. So it's how do you communicate those changes down? Because if you don't communicate them, then people's brains start wandering, right? And it's going to go toward the negative. And then pretty soon you've got hundreds or thousands of people that are now negative. And it's very hard to turn that around because you can't get the muffin lady in, right? Or have an ice cream social because you're not in the same room. So how do you do that virtually? So, it's using the right tools. It's revamping everything for the virtual world. And you know that. You're a subject matter expert in remote.
And I think it's really important that people focus on that, right? Because and this is not just for contact centers. This is for any leader.
Mhm.
When you are looking at how many people are in your direct and indirect reporting change, you really need to multiply that by 5 of the number of people that you're impacting. So if you have, 5, say 10 people reporting to you, the decisions that you make don't just directly impact 10 people. Those individuals have families, they have spouses, they have kids, they have parents that they're potentially caregivers to. So you have to think that for every one person that uh, you're making a decision about, you are indirectly impacting 5 lives. So I've always tried to think as a leader, when I make a decision, if I have 10 direct or indirect reports, that I am impacting 50 people's lives.
Yeah.
So it's really, leadership is not a small thing to think about. It is huge. So this leadership toolbox is such a good thing for people to take on. So do you have any particular case studies from the book that really have a strong impact or that you can talk about for people?
Sure. For example, I went into an organization and the senior vice president was very excited, and told me about everything that was going on and some of the challenges they were having. And she told me that she had 175% annualized attrition. And so we sort of,
Whoa.
yeah, that's a lot of people. I mean, that's expensive. SHRM just had a new study come out in January that says it costs between 20 and 40% of a first year salary or yearly salary for an employee to actually be able to source, recruit, interview, hire, onboard,
Mhm.
train, nest, right? Get on the operations floor. And then you've got, of course, that speed to competency. That's a lot of money. Causes a ripple effect because it puts pressure on all the department heads, right? The recruiters, the people that onboard, the people that train. So it just, back to your times 5, it literally affects an entire organization when you have high attrition like that. And she was pouring her heart out, and it does take its emotional toll on everybody. It really, really does. But then when I asked her, "Well, tell me about your culture," her face just lit up like a Christmas tree, and she was telling me how great the culture was, how people loved to work there, and it just wasn't connecting the dots, right? And
Something didn't
so
make sense.
it didn't make any sense. And really, one of my tools is called the leadership mirror. It's literally looking at yourself. Those are those 3 o'clock in the morning, moments where have all those doubts about yourself and you're rethinking everything. And it's really about, what am I doing to contribute to the challenge, right? Or to the success of the organizations. It's how am I contributing as a leader? Because the buck stops with the leader. My dad always used to say, leadership is not for the faint of heart, and it's not. So I was able to go into that organization, and through utilizing the leadership tools of building the big picture, meeting people where they're at, understanding what people's positions are and how they could contribute at all levels to the success, and building the big picture on where we were all going to go, we were able to turn that down to less than industry standards for attrition in a very short while.
When you go out and guys, I know that you're looking at this now, and there is a link to our Amazon storefront just to make sure that everybody has access to get the book, because I highly recommend it myself. Not to mention, you should read some of the reviews about Vicky's book. There are some great takeaways from it, but reviews themselves suggest that the book is actually more like a manual. Was that your intention when you were writing the book?
Yes, I wanted to articulate it through stories because people can relate to stories. So literally every chapter, and there's 14 tools, there's 14 chapters. It literally takes the first tool, it starts with a story, it explains the tool, and gives 2 or 3 more stories. So you can not only see and understand how the tool works, but it also gives you 3 or 4 examples on how it was used in different scenarios, so you can see the impact of the tool that it has. And then there's literally a thread throughout the whole book of literally using these as building blocks. So it's like opening up your leadership toolbox and saying, okay, I've got a challenge. I'm going to use this tool. I'm going to use this one. I'm going to use the triage tool. I'm going to use the meet them where they're at tool. And then you start massaging it and you utilize those tools in your conversations and how you lead your organization. And when one doesn't fit anymore, you pull it out, put it back in the toolbox, and you pull out another one. So when you memorize the tools, you literally can interchange them, and they're super simple. I use these with my kids growing up. So I've had these tools for decades, and they work
See, it
personal.
works leading children as well as leading employees, is what I'm
That's
hearing.
exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think they can be used by both, for everybody, right? So for women that are really trying to move up in their career, really utilizing tools that can set them apart, without ego getting in the way or stomping the feet or doing whatever, people do when they want to be heard. They literally can use these as building blocks to gain visibility and move up the ladder. And I think this is important for women.
And I think that that actually is a really good point because there is, and I'm pulling it up. What tool is it? Tool number 3, with engaging employees through honest dialogue. I think that this is a really good, it's a tool that I didn't realize I needed, but I had started to try and figure out how to use that honest dialogue. That is a difficult thing to do, to just have that open and honest, transparent conversation in certain situations. And you and I were talking. I've recently had to have some situations like that with some people that I've worked with, whether it is, in whatever situation, but specifically as women, sometimes it's hard to pull that out of your toolbox and have that open and honest conversation. And so I love that this is one of the tools in the leadership toolbox.
Yeah, it's a great one. It also can be used with what I call the third party story tool. So sometimes when you're trying to break down walls and you're talking with someone, giving a story about something that happened to somebody else makes that person that you're talking to actually say, well, I'm not the only person that did that. Or I feel like, so it pulls the walls down so that you can have that honest dialogue.
You used a term that I strangely had not heard before. It was called the psychology of work at home. And I want to kind of dig into that a little bit.
Okay.
What did you mean by the psychology of work at home?
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you a story then. So when I first started working virtually back in 2000, I was in a sales management position at the time, and I went to the grocery store, and it was a Wednesday, and I walked out and with one bag of groceries, and it was dark, and I thought I got here at 5:30. Oh, maybe I'm losing it, right? Maybe it didn't happen that way. And so the next week when I went back to the grocery store, same thing. I went in, it was light. I came out, it was dark because it was daylight savings time. The third week I went in, it literally was like a movie. I'm in the produce aisle and I'm holding a head of romaine lettuce, and it like the world stops and I can see everything in slow motion. This is no joke. And I'm looking at the head of lettuce and I look at this woman next to me who I don't know. And I say to her, and I'm holding the head of lettuce, I'm like, how long have we been standing here talking? And she's like, oh my gosh, it's been 45 minutes. And I thought to myself, God, Vicki, you must be desperate. You're standing in the produce aisle talking to some woman you don't even know because you're working at home and you're lonely. And so I started watching my behaviors and realized that I needed to get out of the house on Tuesday, go have coffee, go to the grocery store, talk to somebody, because I really was on this island.
I thought you were going to tell me that you were just like having this
No.
love affair with the head of romaine lettuce or something. So I'm so glad that the story went like in this really much better place.
Well, what is even funnier is I went several aisles over and I couldn't reach my tea. And I couldn't reach, and I was trying to step on the bottom shelf. And finally, this real tall guy came and I said, excuse me, could you help me? He was happy to help. He got down my tea. And I stood there for another 15 minutes, talked to some guy I didn't even know. And I thought to myself, you've got to get a life, Vicki. And so if you fast forward that to 2010, I went to work for a 100% virtual organization, and it was a turnaround. And what was interesting is we started seeing changes in people's CSATs. They'd start out of the gate at 100%, and then they would start slowly but surely, and attendance would start going down. So I said to my business analyst, I said, Christian, see if you can find out what's going on. He says, well, let me pull the data. Numbers don't lie, right? They're going to tell a story. And he was the best analyst I've ever had. He literally put all the waves of people sort of on top of each other on a spreadsheet. And what we looked at was at week 8 to 12, they started going down. People that were great performers that showed up for work suddenly were sliding. Then we started asking people questions. I started doing focus groups. We labeled it virtual shock. And what we figured out was that people were on this island and their behaviors were changing. And that's what I mean by the psychology of work at home or virtual. So what we did was we started teaching them about virtual shock during the recruiting process, all the way through training. We taught them how they could recognize it in their coworkers, agent to agent. So someone could say, oh my gosh, Anne's going through virtual shock because she's not chatting as much. She's
Now,
quiet.
I do need to say virtual shock. We're not talking about shock therapy. Virtual shock here is the
No.
shock of being in a virtual environment
That's
for
right.
8 to 12 weeks. And
That's
it's
right.
becoming numb to the whole situation and
It is.
realizing like you need some social interaction. That's virtual shock.
That is virtual. That is absolutely, I don't want to be hauled into human resources. No, that's exactly what it is. So having activities to get them off the phone or do that, I know it's non-productive time, but in the long run, you'll cut down on attrition and it more than pays for itself.
The
So yeah,
return on
so that's really
investment
what I
there
think.
is much more than the like you said, the attrition.
Yeah, and showing up late, the no call, no shows, the getting lost in the virtual hallways, all the things that people do. And then the supervisors run around trying to chase people down on chat and text. And it really just becomes a vicious cycle. Leaders have to re engineer how they lead to work in a virtual environment. It happens all the time.
I love that you just said that because one of the things that I noted down was the word re-engineering leadership skills. You know, what does that mean to re-engineer leadership skills? I mean, when I hear re-engineer, I'm not thinking about people. I'm thinking about
Right.
mechanics. I'm thinking about machines. I'm thinking about technical items. I'm not thinking about people.
That's true. But we have to be conscious leaders and we have to realize that what we do impacts people. So normally we just explain to people what we want them to do, and now we just send email, right? Because we're virtual, and we expect everybody to do it. Then all these emails start shooting around everybody's inbox, asking questions, and the chain is this long. People are getting lost; they can't find anything. In a brick and mortar, you just go into the break room and you see a couple people standing, and you'd stand there and talk, and you'd figure it out. And what people are trying to do is manage by email in the virtual environment instead of just getting on a 15-minute call and saying, okay, you're taking number 1 and 3. Mary, you do number 2. Who wants to do number 8? Let's regroup on Tuesday, or let's regroup tomorrow for 10 minutes and tell me where you're at. People say, well, that's just too many meetings. But when you don't do that in a virtual environment, then there's misunderstandings and people don't get their job done because people don't know what's going on. And then everyone's emailing back and forth.
What I'm interested to know from you is what you think makes a good work from home leader.
I think you have to like people. I think you have to be able to connect through all the mediums on the phone, email, make those chats really personable. I think you have to love people to really be good. And I think you have to be able to give them good boundaries. In other words, this is what I expect. And you have to be able to take the feedback. There has to be a two-way communication with virtual, or employees will just click you off. It's asking their opinion. It's having their input on decisions. I never make decisions in a silo at all. It's making them feel valid for who they are as a person and for their ideas. And I think it's that exchange of ideas. I really believe that's the key. And I think introspect is important in all leadership, to be able to look and say, how am I impacting somebody that works in my organization? And the onus is on the leader. I mean, it's also on the employee, that's true, but we have to take responsibility for our own organizations and be willing to make decisions on how we're going to change how we lead.
How do you do that though? How do you analyze and when you can't see them a lot? Because a lot of these times, a lot of situations, people have, well, let's take a step back. At the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was on camera. Like it was just like this thing. I was on camera more during the pandemic than I had been on camera for the prior 25 years of working from home. It was absolutely insane to me. But now I've seen so many people like revert back and just say, no, I'm not going to be on camera unless it's an absolute necessity. Um, so now you're back to that whole I can't see your body language. I don't know if you're making a face at me. I have to go by your tone of voice. So, how what are some strategies that
Mhm.
you can utilize as a leader to compensate for that?
A great question. Well, remember, we were virtual before March of 2020, right? So the
Mhm.
conference calls, right? So most of my career was just on the phone with people because
I
we
can always tell somebody who says, "You want to jump on my bridge?"
yeah, I'll remember that. Do you want to jump on my bridge? So I really think that in order to, you have to listen. You have to listen for pregnant pauses. You have to listen to the tones that are different. And I really believe that having one off conversations with folks, not one on ones that are formal, right, where you're going through everything, but it's picking up the phone and me saying, hey, Ann, you have a couple minutes? I've got this challenge. I'm not sure what to do. Give me your take. And I get to know Ann on a personal level on the phone. So I'm listening. And then when I'm looking or listening into Ann in a meeting, I can tell if she's reacting the same. It could mean she doesn't want to be in crowd. She doesn't want to speak up. I mean, there could be a wide variety of reasons why, but it's that personal touch. You've got to be able to understand the person and see the changes in the behaviors, in the tones, on how they speak. And then a high level of emotional intelligence. The best leaders in virtual have a high level of emotional intelligence. They can feel their way through things. They're not psychic. It's not like they know what that person's going to say, but they know something may be wrong. Or they may know that that person wants to say something else. It's listening and feeling. And I know that's terribly like old fashioned and it's not cutting edge because it's not technology. But at the end of the day, we're not robots yet, right? We're human beings.
We are. And I see, I want to dive into this a little bit deeper because I see so many people out there that say, here are some free agendas for your one on ones. And here's this. And like, there's millions of them out there. And what drives me nuts is they have structured these agendas to put in this get to know you in every one-on-one. Have your personal conversation, then have your work conversation. And because these are so structured, and it's like, okay, Vicky, let's have our one-on-one. How was your day? How was your this? Da 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 da. Okay, now I have checked off the box that I have talked to Vicky about her personal life, and it's going to this. And there's this system that a lot of startups use, and that is their weekly touch base with their employees. And they have this part where it is, okay, I'm going to talk to you about your non-work stuff, and then we're going to talk about this, and then we're going to talk. It is so impersonal, personal that it takes away from what you're trying to accomplish. As much as it is well meaning, it actually is a negative effect and impact. And I don't think that it's not doing what you think it's doing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people sort of are not understanding that because everything is all about process, right? So and this is something that's happened to me my whole career. When I do performance evaluations, every 100% across the board for 20 some odd years, they have said to me, every person's been disappointed because they're expecting this earth shattering, verbiage to come out of my mouth. And I'm talking to them every day or every other day. So I do short little spigots. I will pick up and say, hey, I'm passing through. They know I don't have an hour. I'm passing through. I've got 10 minutes. I'll do a lot with a headset on in the kitchen even, and say, hey, tell me what's going on. That gives them permission to let their guard down, right? And then we just start chit chatting. It always ends up going back to work because I'll say, gee, you sound a little strange. Is everything okay? You sound a little hesitant. I'm sorry. I'm just so rushed. My mother's in the hospital. Oh, really? Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry to hear that. How can I help you? That's the thing is how I'm not going to ask, I don't want to cross any lines, right? With HIPAA, but I can say, what can I do to support you today? Vic, no, I don't really know. And then I'll make a note and then I'll call the next day and say, hey, I'm passing through. I got 3 minutes, but what do you need? Tell me what you need. Actually, I need to move my shift or actually I'm going to be late for this meeting. Who do you want me to call? You want Joe to handle it? I'm all over it. Don't worry about it. You take care of your mom. Pick up the phone or chat Joe and say, she's going to be gone. I need you to take this meeting. So it's being that bridge by being human. You do that enough, and now you get on those one-on-ones, and now they free flow. And you don't even have to have them a lot of times because they're already telling you those things. I carry a notebook or I'm on my iPad, and every employee or every leader has a page, and I just put the notes down so I can remember to ask them about it, right? I'm getting a little older, and I can ask them about that. But they know you care, and then it just becomes free flowing.
You know what I find interesting about this, and tell me if I heard you incorrectly, is that you are not having scheduled one-on-ones. You're having unscheduled, I'm just going to check in with you, touch bases that are, hey, just want to know how you're doing. Oh, it turned into a work thing, but it was not meant to be work. It was a human check-in. But they're not scheduled, they're not strategic, and they're not procedural. It's the procedural, process-based check-ins that take away from the human experience that is what's getting through to your people.
I agree with you. Now, a lot of times you have to weave business. So a lot of times, and I tend to go fast. I'm a fast mover, and my folks know it. So pick up the phone and say, "Listen, I called you about the meeting tomorrow, but before I do that, and remind me that I don't get off topic." I always ask them to remind me. Tell me what's going on, and is there anything I can do for you? Then we'll start chit chat, and they'll say, "Okay, Vic. Okay, now let's go back. I have an idea about the meeting tomorrow." I'm like, "Great, I'm ready. Shoot." And then I will type or I'll put on my notepad if I'm writing and write down what they said, and then I'll repeat it back to them. Then I always follow it up with a phone call message, even if they're in a meeting, it's a voicemail. "Hey, it's Vic. I'm just passing through. Love the conversation. Love the idea about the meeting. I'm all over it. I'll talk to you tomorrow." I can do the same thing in text. I can do the same thing in chat. And I do a lot
Voice
of
to text
personal notes.
is wonderful. It's my arch nemesis, mind you, because it always like says things wrong, but they understand it. Like they read voice to text errors, but it gets the job done. Like, thanks for the call, da 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 da. Boom.
And you're done. But think about this. This is what I try to impact people with this ideas. Do what you do in brick and mortar, only you're in virtual. If you were getting out of your car and I saw you in the parking lot, I'd wave, "Hey, Ann, good morning." We'd shoot the breeze. You may say, "Hey, listen, can you handle the agenda and the meeting?" Yeah, no problem. We walk in together. You go one way, I go the other. I go into the ladies' room. You go into the break room. Someone stops each of us. That's how it's done in brick and mortar. The feelings of brick and mortar are that we feel connected. So the real question is, how do we get the same feeling in a work at home environment that we do in brick and mortar? And it's all how it's angled, presented, and you need more time to make the human connection. You just need to.
As we move forward, where do you see the role of leadership moving in this post-pandemic world?
I think leadership skills, the interpersonal skills, the understanding human behavior, the psychology of what happens at work and how people respond is going to be critical. I think those skills are going to be needed more than ever before because everyone's driving toward, the non-personal. I think a leader can stand out by having those interpersonal skills. And there's another piece that we haven't talked about. It's that filter in the middle. It's why people respond the way they do, and it has nothing to do with us. Sometimes way back in their childhood, they're responding. I had a situation where someone told me they ended up hating me because I reminded them of their mother because I moved my head like this and I gestured like that.
I've had that.
Yeah. And when I said, "I'm not leaving the room." It took her like 3 meetings. And I said, "I've got to understand why you don't like me." And she kept saying I was the best boss she ever had. I was like, "I don't understand. If I'm the best boss you ever had, why are you snapping at me?" And she's like, "I don't know." I gave her a day off, told her to come back the next morning. We were going to tackle it again. So she came in, she said, "I figured it out." So we went and got her the employee assistant line and everything. After about a month, she came in tears and said, "I just can't help it." I said, "There's going to be another, mom pseudo Vicky out there. You're young. It's going to happen." And she just said, I just can't do it with you." And I said, "We're going to find you a job." We helped her with a resume. I role played with her for the interview, and she got a job, and we gave her a big going away party and waved at her as she was leaving. So again, meeting them where they're at. So I think we have to also understand that when people respond to us, it's something in their past long before they got to our employment.
Absolutely. So giving the increase in Well, this is kind of a tough question for me because, I think that I see an increase in remote work. Now, when we are out here and we see the likes of certain larger organizations saying, I'm not going to do it anymore. Okay, so you got two or three big organizations saying not. That doesn't mean that there's a decrease in it. It just means there's a couple of loudmouths saying that they're not going to do it. Okay, that doesn't impact the overall. So be careful what you're reading, be careful what you're seeing, and make sure you're doing all of your research. But there is still an overall prevalence that remote work, it's not going away.
No, it's
So
not.
what trends or changes do you anticipate in the leadership practices of remote work in the near future?
You mean if people will continue to adopt it and keep
Correct.
it? Absolutely. What I'm hearing from our clients are basically that they'd like to have some people. So it's two things. They'd like to have people come in the office, but if they want to stay home, that's fine too, because they don't want to lose the employees. You don't want to lose a good employee. Oh my gosh, are you kidding? And then we have other people say, we're just remaining 100% virtual. I don't think it's going. I know it's not going away because just like consumers, employees are stamping their feet, and if we want good employees, we need to meet them where they're at. And I think it's not going away. It's not going away. We're a 100% virtual organization at LivePro. I've been running 100% virtual organizations for most of the last since 2000, with the
Yeah.
exception of just a few places.
You and we are a couple of OGs right here. I was in the 90s, you were right at 2000. Like, we've been doing it forever.
Forever.
So what's next for you? Do you have any upcoming projects, initiatives that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I went to work for Life Pro back last year, and I moved out of the executive operations chair, which I never thought I would do. When the CEO contacted me, I thought he wanted me to build him a contact center. When he said he wanted to triple the footprint of the company, and they'd already been over here for 4.5 years, or a 22-year-old company, I said, "Well, show me the software." And when they showed me the software, I thought I never seen anything like this before, and it was unbelievable. And so I literally left my executive contact center chair operationally and moved into building partnerships, business development, all kinds of things, and am really enjoying it because it's something different, and it's where I can use my operational expertise. So I do two things that I love. I love talking shop on contact centers, just sign me up, and I love to identify operational gaps. And this current job allows me to do either. And I don't have to worry if somebody shows up at 8 o'clock and I don't have enough butts in the chair, right? Because that's what we call it. So it's very different. I love the space. I've been in it for a long time. It's fast paced, and I just love what I'm doing now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So what is your advice for somebody that is moving up in the leadership world? Maybe they're a supervisor moving into manager, manager moving into director, in this virtual world that we're in now. What is your advice to them on as they grow in leadership? Keep their eye on what if you're talking to this individual, what do they need to do as they continue to grow in their position?
That's a super question. I truly believe that being introspective as a leader is probably one of the most important things, because we can hear, we can feel, we can see when people might bolt back or move a certain way. It's about going inside and saying, what could I do to make this better? What have I done to not make it as good as I want it to be? And what can I do? So the first thing is introspect and being a conscious leader, literally being conscious. And most people don't, they just run through their day. The second piece would be to say, I need some help. So a coach, books, Audible or audio books. I mean, go get some help and then pick out one thing to work on, and then work on that for a number of weeks. And I always tell people it's like going on a diet, right? If you're dieting and you're not losing any weight, then the diet's not working, right? So if you're using a tool and it's not working and you don't see a difference, maybe give it another few weeks, but then go get another one. I really think it's nip and tucking as we try to get better at our craft. I think the other thing is networking groups. I think, especially for women, I think it's connecting with other people so that we can bounce ideas. I've got an employee. This is what they're doing. Like what you and I did before we got on today. We chit chatted about something in your world, and I think it's just finding people and putting those ideas in front of them and finding out what they say. And then technology. It's looking at the newest technology. It's opening up your vantage point. I think as a leader, you have to be looking at people, processes, and technology. And though it starts with ourselves and being introspect, you have to be introspective in who we are.
So, Vicki, why would anybody reach out to you, and how would they reach out to you?
Well, if a contact center is trying to find help their agents find answers at conversational speed with a huge ROI to reduce headcount and AHT and new hire training days, then it's vicki.brackett@livepro.com. And I do help other people. And if they have any other questions, you can reach out to me at LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. I'm always happy to help anybody if they've got any kind of other questions about their career. And I have a big network, and I'm happy to share that with people.
So, as usual, those links have been put below. And also, don't forget Vicki's wonderful book. We will put a link to that as well. Highly recommend. Vicki, thank you so much for coming on the show.
This has been fun. You're terrific. You really do a great job making people feel comfortable. I've watched a lot of your interviews. You do a good job. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us again this week. And we look forward to seeing you next week. As we wrap the episode up, we would like to take this time to thank you for joining us this week on Unexpected Journey. Our guest information will be linked in the episode description, along with a link to our company website, remoteevolution.com, and our host website, annbib.com. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel so that you never miss an episode and we can continue to bring them to you. Let us know your thoughts on what we discussed in the comments section. And once again, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next week for another episode of Unexpected Journey.